No, 8:30 in the morning, which is a bit of an early start for me. So, welcome. Just wondering how I can get those comments back. That's what I want. Ian, what are you talking? Oh, I see. There's some comments above. Right. When you stand on a hill and take a photo looking down the street, do you draw an upward diagonal line? What I do first, Ian, is I work out where the eye level is. Where there is the horizontal line, I don't worry about the slope. I pretend the slope's not there, and I work out where eye level is. And once I've got eye level, I can start to see the perspective angles, the true perspective angles above and below eye level. And then I find the lowest one and look to see how the ground level interacts with that. The important thing to remember is that when the ground is not level, when the ground slopes, that the actual ground line isn't one of the perspective angles. It doesn't form one of the fans. It's outside of that pattern. It simply is what it is. It is the level of the slope, whether it's steep or shallow. If it happens to almost look a bit, if it's a very shallow slope, it may sort of look like one of the perspective angles, but it's not. So the way I do that gives me my horizontal line, that gives me the fan pattern, and then I disregard ground level. And what happens is, what we need to bear in mind is that as the buildings go up the street or down the street, the architecture at the bottom street level changes, and the architecture across the building or across different buildings changes. So door levels change, they become higher as the street goes higher and windows become higher. And a mistake I often see, and it really just comes from poor observation, is that the windows and doorways keep going along all the buildings at the same height until they kind of crunch into ground level. And it always looks awkward, and it's really just careful observation there. Sorry, I'm just not sure how to, how to keep the chat up. Not that I'll be seeing it for very long. So, how are you this morning? Ready to draw St. Michael's Gate? St. Michael's Gate is in the Slovakian city of Bratislava, and it's set into the old medieval walls. I think it's the oldest surviving city gate in the city. So it's a great drawing subject, and I think we'll start. Now, I talk about how I like to make marks. Hello, me too. I talk about how I like to do little mark making exercise where I just warm up. G'day, Ian. I imagine it's not morning in Canada. So here's my little mark making exercise, and I learned a few valuable things from it, which will help me now when I do the actual drawing. And if you don't mind me just finishing some of my coffee. I need to get the last few mouthfuls down before I start drawing, because once I start drawing, I'll forget about it, and then it will be stone cold. How's your drawing been, everyone? Has it been good? I drew my first mountain yesterday, and it was a lot of fun with a drawing, with a photo of the Swiss Alps that we took when we were in Switzerland for the first and only time in 2015. We were meant to be there in 2020 as part of our trip that got cancelled. I need to stop talking about the trip that was cancelled and talk about the trip that we actually get to have. Good morning, Yana. Oh dear, I'm very sorry about that. Yana, that's terrible. I hadn't seen that. The attack in Brussels. Very sorry about that. Our experience of Belgium is Ghent, which was an absolutely beautiful city. I was just really taken aback. And we were there for the World Cup when Belgium played Russia happened to take place while we were there, and it was just a wonderful city of celebration that night. Oh, excellent, McGee. That's great. Hey, Chris. Yeah, that's great. There you go. I finished that. So look, we can start to draw, okay? So I'm just playing around. I think I'm going to use a 0.2 and a 0.3 millimeter pen. I'll start with the 0.3 because I'll start at the left-hand side and move across. I'll explain that a little more when we start in just a minute. And then, sorry. I trimmed my beard before I started and one of the hairs is finished up in my mouth. You don't want to know that. But, and I'll use the 0.2 for just a bit further back, I think. And then I was thinking, depending how the time's going, how long it takes me to draw it, might use some marker to add the tone. I've decided not to try and cross-hatch this because I think we'll end up losing too much of the detail. But let me put this camera out of here and down into the other stand, and I'll flip it, and we'll look down on the drawing now. So here we go. Just give me a moment to adjust it, everyone. Okay. So here is St. Michael's Gate. Don't know if it's familiar to anyone, but you get a lovely view of the city from there. I might just lift it up a little bit. I've put the tape on in case I do want to use the marker. Not that I use that end. I use that end. Use the marker to add some tone at the end. But we'll see how we go for time. So, where to start? Well, I guess there's two choices. I ummed and ahed, and I was thinking that initially that I'd start at the top and work down, and sometimes that is how I do this sort of scene, top down, where there's a tower, and particularly where the scene is busy down here. I don't find this is a very easy way to start and keep the scale correct, because I find that once I've drawn this, that it becomes difficult to then draw the main architecture, keeping the scale correct with the people and the other bits and pieces. I find it much easier if I've got a substantial building or something that's physically larger in the scene drawn, to then draw the smaller elements in proportion. I find it hard to go from drawing small things and then getting the larger things in proportion. So I don't know how you go with that, but that's how it works for me. And so I've decided that I'm going to start with this building on the left-hand side, at least in sort of outline, and move across, because that will get me to this point, this section, and I think that will work best. I've decided to draw this thing in the street. It looks like a big ring being held above the street. I don't know whether it's some sort of sculpture or whether it performs some other function, whether it lights up at night or something like that. Maybe it puts on light shows or something. So I'm going to draw that. That's the sort of detail I normally think, well, will I draw it or leave it out and pretend it's not there? But I think I'll put it in this time. So got my Copic multi-line at 0.3 and 0.2. My 0.2, which has now disappeared, even though I had it a moment ago, it's getting a bit. That's the preparatory marks I made for the mountain drawing yesterday. I don't normally do that much in that much detail, but I hadn't drawn mountains before, so I just wanted to make sure what I was thinking was going to work. It tends to blot a bit, at the start of the line, but I feel like there's still a fair bit of life left in it, so I don't want to rush to put a new nib in it just yet. So if it gets a bit goopy, that's why. Okay, so let's start. So this is the sort of perspective angle that I think can be challenging to draw because it is very steep. You know, it's easy. I did do some preparatory marks for this, as I told you, and where are they? Because I'll just show you. Is it on the floor? No, that's not it. I have so many scraps of paper with these rough markings that I do. Oh, look, it was just here a moment ago. I don't know where it's gone. But yeah, when I drew, I'll just recreate it. For this line, I did something like that. And that looks steep enough, doesn't it? You know, and yet when we actually look at the angle that it is, it's much steeper. And I think this is where careful observation and checking our work afterwards shows us that when it's like this, we still can't bring ourselves to draw it as steeply as it is. And I think that's really important. So after all I've done, after all I know about myself with perspective, after all the perspective I've measured, my first instinct with this line was to draw it more at that angle. And that's the difference. And even if you don't think the perspective looks wrong, in inverted commas, because of course it would be, but if you feel it doesn't look wrong, what we lose is we lose the drama, the visual tension of the steepest line in the scene, because on this side of the road it's not so steep. And so this is a really dramatic angle for feeding our view into the center, and we've just taken it out of our drawing if we haven't put it in. So let's see if we can put it in as we start. So you're probably going to hear that heater. It's just getting a bit chilly on my legs in here. It's meant to be moving towards summer. Is that any better? Yeah, that will work better. And now, of course, all these lines down here angle less and less as we move down. So we want to preserve that as well. We don't want to draw lots of lines parallel. This line is this angle, this line is this angle. They're nothing alike. We need to spread our lines as we go down. Now let me see, we've got 1, 2, 3. We have a fourth one here. So it always takes a little bit more time at the start as we start to feel our way through what we're drawing. We're getting familiar with the subject. We're just getting familiar again with the marks, making marks on the paper. Quite a bit of detail here. Oh, thanks, Ian. Yes, don't forget to hit the like button if you think this is likely to be likable. Okay, I think that's enough just to give me a sense of what's happening here. I think I'll come back. I'll just what I'll just do is sorry, you're probably going to hear some noises, a bit of banging. The room I'm in our house is right next to a neighbour's back door, and there's a very efficient lady who lives there with getting all her morning cleaning done, and she's sweeping and taking things in and out to the rubbish this time of the day, so I'm afraid she doesn't know that I'm filming. Okay, so this next building's a little bit complex. I have posted this reference on my channel community page, so of course after you've watched me draw it, you can go and have as much fun with it as you want. I see, there's a line, there's a perspective line here, so I'm actually going to work with that. That's just a little bit too steep. Who'd have thought that was even possible to do it too steep? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is the sort of detail that if we draw it out as I'm doing, it's very easy to draw it across too far, and then we start to spread too much. So I'm not going to worry about that so much. I mean, this line is getting pretty close to vertical, for goodness sakes. What chance have we got drawing horizontal lines when they're vertical? I'm just curious, if you're drawing from a reference and you're wondering how you're going, it can be interesting, I find, to do this. So this spot here is this spot here, and it just lets me see that I'm too far over. I'm that much too far over for this distance. And I find that can be a helpful thing to just help me reset my thinking. It also means I can maybe adjust myself and bring it back into line. But it also tells me what I'm likely to do. And so this line comes down to there. So I'll bring this back to here. And by what I'm likely to do, I mean what my natural default is. So some people tend to always make things larger than they really are, and others tend to make them naturally smaller than they really are, and it's good to know which one you do, because then we can be on guard for that. If you have any questions, you can try typing them. If I notice it, if I see it, I will try and give an answer if I can. See, all this side of the street also is going to be in shade. So there will be a fair bit of value on here, which means I don't need to become too precise. In fact, I'm thinking I'm after I finish this section, I might switch to the 0.2 because it's getting a bit thick, the line for what's happening here. I see, there's another lamppost there. And I'll stick a lamp. Why do I use the Copic pens and not, for example, oops, I just lost that. And not for the very popular Secura pens. Are you a Secura rep, are you? No, look, when I first decided to try switching from pencil to pen, I just went to the art supply shop that I have locally and bought some pens. And these are the ones, I've never used Tombow pens, I'm afraid, McGee. These were the ones that I just happened, of the three that I bought, these are the ones I happen to like best. And in fairness, some of the ones that I'm not using were very fine. Like I bought some 0.05s in some brands, thinking, oh, thin would be good. And I just found them too thin and never used them. And so the Copic ones, I bought some larger widths in and I liked them. So I just kept using them. I wasn't particularly aware at the time that Copic was an expensive brand. I wasn't buying the sketch markers. I wasn't using them. And they seem to me much the same price as the other brands in terms of the multi-liners. And they also have I think I actually bought these disposable ones first, the Copic disposable ones, but I wanted the 0.2mm pen and they don't come in the disposable size. So, but I do like the fact that with these, you can change the nib and you can change the ink barrel inside. Have I got any? Yeah. So you can change the nibs. You can buy those separately, and you can buy I think I've used my last ink, spare ink. And you can actually also change the ends of the sketch markers as well as buy ink separately to add to them. So I like that because it sort of means you can have things on hand, and I like that because, particularly making videos, I don't really want to be halfway through a video and then find that I've got to stop because I'm out of ink. How am I going? Now, of course, these angles need to be steeper than these angles because we're moving closer towards the vertical perspective line, if you like, the line that's straight ahead, which is where these lines end up if they go overhead. If you think of an archway, and if we were doing the perspective angles of the stones in the archway, the one straight ahead would be vertical. And it's exactly the same with the spray of these, or the fanning of these vertical angles from one side of the street to the other. Straight ahead, they will be vertical. Now, we don't actually have one straight ahead. This is the closest one we get. But it's starting to get very steep. Now, when I'm trying to get, what I do is I don't look at this line, and this is, I think, a really important point. I don't look at this line and try and draw that line. I find that a really deceptively slippery thing to do. What I do is I look at this line here. I look at that, well, there's no line, but I look at the width that I want, and I go, okay, I want a width if I'm drawing about the same size as there. And what I find is that inevitably, is a much more accurate way of doing this. It's very easy to go too far that way for all sorts of reasons. And if I go too far this way down, then I'll make this too wide. So yeah, and that is quite steep too. See, that's not steep enough. So this is where we start to get very gestural with the detail on this facade. This pen's getting pretty blotchy too. I think I may have actually banged the nib of this, and so it's so it now has a tendency to blotch. It's lost its Okay, so we're really just drawing the effect of this detail. Like I talk a lot about drawing the effect of the detail, not the exactness, and it works for architecture as well as leaves. Excuse me, my head's still waking up. So this is where it gets fun. So I've got this building here, which comes out like this. And this is where I start to see, so if I come down here, so this center line will come down, there's no actual line here, but it will come down about there. So now I'm just working out the alignment of the tower. And this part now aligns with here, with that corner. But sometimes I often like to go back to the first thing I drew. So this also lines up with that. Now I haven't particularly drawn that, but sometimes if I've gotten out of kilter in my positioning here with this one as I've moved across, if I refer this back to the first thing I drew, then it ends up tightening things up again. Whereas if I just keep measuring off the last thing I've drawn with my alignment, then it can get out little by little by little. But by going back to the first one I drew and use that for alignment every time, even if it's further across the page, it really increases the accuracy. So I can really recommend that. And that actually looks like it's going to be quite right. I'll put a mark there. What type of paper do I use? Probably a brand you've never seen and never will. It's Art Tech. It's an Australian made and owned company. It's 210 GSM. So it's a drawing cartridge, so it's thick, and it's okay with water-based media as well, but it's not great for watercolor because while it's not smooth, it's not like the paper you do. It's not like the really smooth Japanese papers for manga work, but it's not rough enough. The tooth, there's not enough tooth to keep to sort of hook the watercolor pigment, and so the pigment tends to kind of slide around on top of the paper. which can result in some interesting things. So yeah, so now I'm going to position this tower and see how we go with that. This is one of those sort of moments I put off when I draw. I start to think, what else can I do? Because this is the make or not make part of it. So, and of course, the advantage of, say, if we'd started here and worked down the tower, is that then we can move out happily enough. But I, again, find it's difficult to get the proportions, say, of this tower done when nothing else is there. And it would have been easy to have, say, drawn this slightly too large, which would have meant by the time we got down here, we had nowhere near enough paper to draw the scale that we'd established. So let me see. So we worked out that it was about here. That's what we're looking at. So again, there's like a line here and a corner here, but these lines don't, they're flush with the building because of this inset corner. Right, oh thanks Ian. I have used Derivan paints, not for a long time, but and this line we can see comes down just a bit past there, so that would be about right. Make it a bit smaller there and a bit wider here. Now I know it's not circular. That's okay, Brian. I know it's not circular, and certainly that's not circular. But I'll just use that as a guide. Now this is where it's helpful to notice that this line lines up with that corner line, but this line doesn't. It sits further to the left. And particularly in a scene such as this where the lighting can make some things harder to see, never be afraid of vandalizing your reference photo. And this line here kind of lines up with there. I've stopped jabbering. I must be focusing on what I'm doing. Now again, this so the wireframe construction for the line workers. don't know what you mean by that. So now we set okay, well that's no good, is it? It's not sitting symmetrically on top. So how can I improve this? Well, the only way is to move this one further along because I can't take it away. And it's the silhouette that's going to be the most important thing at the end. And I'll be putting some value on this as well. So as soon as I make a mistake, and by mistake, I mean a line that's not in a place that is representing the effect that I want, which in this case is symmetry, straight away I start to think, okay, how can I, or can I, but how can I disguise this in some way by the end of the drawing? Well, and you don't really need to understand perspective at all if you draw from references, because you can just draw what you see. But if we want to draw, if we want to create scenes, then that is a bit different. That's the problem. I'm not taking the curve out enough. And so what I'm looking at is the symmetry. Is the symmetry there as we go up? Well, yeah, I got 4 videos on observation for drawing. They're some of my earliest YouTube videos because it was an obvious topic for me because I just know it's so important. And I got to admit, when I do critique drawings I do charge for that. If you want to have a session with me for an hour, me critiquing your drawings, it's $50 US for an hour, where you email me the drawings beforehand, 2 or 3 drawings with the references that you used, and I will go over them with you with a fine-tooth comb, and I will give you suggestions as to ways I think you could focus your future efforts to improve the effect that you're trying to get. But I often look at them and look at the reference and I say, what were you thinking? How did you possibly get this line, this angle from here? Now, the thing I want to make sure is that I don't let this get too big. So this isn't wider, shouldn't be wider than that. And so these are the kind of alignments that we need to get used to seeing, aligning up where things line up with what we've already drawn. And yeah, okay. And so now with this section, I'll start to, so this is where the top should be. I can push it up a little bit higher. I can take this tape off if I need to, that I've got at the top here. What I do is I've taped this because I am expecting to throw some value on it and just didn't want to be doing that when it started. But it also is a nice frame that helps me just with proportions, helps me to get them correct. So where are we up to? We're up to here. So I see what I've done now. This next section is too large. I was talking too much, and I've taken it sort of more to there and there. So I need to be aware that when I draw this next section, it's going to look a little bit small. So I'll probably just aim to make it a little bit larger than it really is, just to sort of try and bring our proportions back on track a little bit. I actually think this may be the pen where I need to change the nib first. Oh well, managed to get it in. Managed to squeeze it in the paper. I think that's where my paper ends. So I've just taken it up a little bit more than that. Okay, so now that I've got that done, I can breathe a sigh of relief, and I can come back down and what are some of the details here? There's some decorative band in there, and there's something happening up here. At that. So now we have, and there is something there. Let's work at these funny corners, shall we? And then we have this detailing of brickwork. Should have done that just a little more finely, but anyway, that'll do. Okay, let's get back onto this. Just simplify those windows a little bit. So, with these windows, they go with those. Something happening there. this is a gate. So the top of the arch lines up with something below there. Okay, the centre of the arch. So it just slightly angles out from here. Then just to give me a sense of what going down looks like. Oh, I see. So one of them is up here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Never be afraid of counting. I spend a lot of my drawing time counting. 1, 2, 3, and then there's a bit of a gap. And these windows line up with those ones, so that works out okay. And now we have that thing, and then this lines up pretty much with that, which is looking right. I see, that's what's happening there. This building comes out slightly. And this is the actual corner coming down here. And this one comes across about there. And there we have that. It's looking a bit feels a bit pointy. Maybe when I get the rest of the street drawn in, it will look okay. That's an interesting thought. That is it easier if we take the photo ourselves? Maybe also if we've taken the photo ourselves, it does mean that we like the image because we've thought it's worthy of a photo, and we probably spent some time looking at it already just in life and taking the photo. And the fact that we like it means that it's easier to observe it. It's easier to observe detail in things we enjoy because we can see the details more quickly, more easily, more intensely, more accurately, all of that. There's some sort of crest thing down here. And we have sadly my wife has had to go out, so otherwise I think I'd be giving my secret signal to I need another cup of coffee, darling. I'll have to struggle without it. Gosh, 50 minutes. This has been intense. And so this one should be lining up with that third one, which works quite well. Here's a rare example of an angle that went up too steep, but I think it'll be better just to leave that. Doesn't leave me quite enough room to get the chimney and the... But I think it's just going to cause less fuss to leave it. As we learn what mistakes we can correct, we also learn which ones aren't worth any more ink work on the paper, which ones will just probably draw attention to if we fuss with more lines on them. Okay, so now we'll be nice and gestural with this side of the street, I think. So I'll use a 0.1 for the 0.2 for these, maybe to the yellow one, and then I'll switch to the 0.3. So I'm trying to grab this shape down here. I just put it too high, so I will bring it down. Okay, a bit of concentration there, just to speed things along a little bit. So that's that. So this comes up here now. Okay, so I'll switch back to the 0.3. And so let me just this sort of lines up with there. Oops. And this umbrella is lower than the other ones. And now just one more building. So this lines up with about there. Okay, so what have we got? We've got, I think, the detail on this side to just a little bit of quick detail to put in. Part of my reasoning for leaving the detail was I figured I'd be a lot faster doing it once I'd warmed up a bit. Now we've got ground level. How do we represent all these people quickly? First thing is to notice that, in fact, the ground's not flat, it slopes up, so the heads aren't all at one level, but it's always good to draw a few people. And then we have people sitting down outside restaurants too, which changes the scale of things a bit. I feel like I've got about that much extra paper here. And so now we need a nice mass of people somewhere. I might just draw a few people. A bit closer than we actually have them. Switch to the 0.2 and I'll put these people up here. So it's going to go about. Okay, so just on an hour, just a few minutes past an hour to do this. So what will we do? Will we... No, look, actually, I've been trying to do these drawings at 8:30. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the messages back. I've been thank you. Yeah, look, I'm trying to do these on Tuesday 8:30 a.m. my time, because I feel that's a little more friendly to people in the Americas than my Sunday night time is, which I think ends up being better for Europe, so, and for sort of Asia moving across the Middle East. But I think it's a very unfriendly time for the Americas, so that's why I'm trying this time. Look, I think this is probably enough time for this now. I think what I might do is I might leave adding the value to this for another session. So I think that's what I'll do, because I don't want to rush it now, and I feel like an hour is enough time. So it's 7:30 p.m. Yeah, yeah, and that's I guess what I was hoping, and so it's I presume earlier in the day on the East Coast. So, hey, if you've found this interesting, helpful, please hit the like button. That helps me. What about the door? Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Ash. Thanks for joining. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I do want to add value, and I'd certainly be hatching value in here, but I just thought trying to hatch value on top of these facades at this perspective. I actually haven't finished this section here, so I might just add a little more detail there. And that will do for that. Oh, and there's a bit here. So, any questions before I go? Good morning, Fajar. I'm afraid you've just missed this, but you'll be able to watch it if you want. Oh, and I probably should do something with the clock. Oh, and I need to do these lines that hold up. There, that's better, so it's not just hovering in space. So, what do you think? So yeah, I'll plan to add value to this, use my markers on this in another session. So there we have it, and I'll finish posting this. Did the harbour and rocks. That was a nice little scene to draw, that one, wasn't it? That's great. So there we have it, 3:30 p.m. in Arizona. Yeah, okay, so that's great, Michelle. This is a more friendly time for the Americas, so, and that would work equally for South America as well. Anyone from South America in the 30 people hanging on in there? Anyone from South America? No? Oh, well, I didn't give much warning. I think I only gave 30 minutes warning. I actually meant to post 12 hours warning last night, but my wife had turned everything off and I couldn't be bothered for it to reboot, so didn't get done. But look, thanks everyone for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. Southern USA, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I think the largest percentage of viewers come from the USA. Oh, okay, yes. So not so friendly for Germany. Sorry about that from Texas. Oh, me too. You should be awake. You're Australian. It's 8:30 in the morning. Thank you. Thank you. That's been great. All right. So look, I'll hopefully catch you for my next live session, which will be my Sunday night at 8:30, all going well, or presumably next Tuesday with another live drawing. So I hope you maybe have a go drawing this. I'll go activate the community page image so that you can see it with a link to this live session. So thanks for joining me. Make sure you do some drawing yourself, but whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.